The forgotten keep of Aelindor. The winds of the western lands carried whispers of ancient things, of shadow and stone, of a keep lost to time. It was called Aelindor, a place forsaken by both men and elves, standing at the edge of the grey hollow where no light lingered long. Few dared to speak of it, and fewer still to tread its cursed grounds. Yet, as with all things that men deem forbidden, there were those whose curiosity outweighed their caution. Aelindor of the Dundane tightened his cloak against the biting wind. The journey to Aelindor had been long and lonely, the shadow of its towers rising stark against the pale winter sky. The ruins had been his obsession for years, ever since an old archivist in Rivendell had spoken of them in passing. There lies the keep of Aelindor, the archivist had said, his voice low and wary. Once a stronghold of Numenor's forgotten kin. It is said they delved too deeply into the arts of shadow, and the keep was abandoned when the land turned sour and the stones themselves grew cold. Aelindor had searched for more, but the elves refused to speak of it, their eyes clouded with memories of sorrow. Even among the Dundane, it was but a faint tale told to frighten wayward children. Yet the thought of it gnawed at him, a piece of Numenor's history left to rot, its secrets buried beneath ruin and ash. Now, at last, he stood before it. The gates of Aelindor were shattered, their iron bars twisted and rusted. Aelindor stepped inside cautiously, his sword at his hip and his hand ready to draw it. The air was heavy, thick with a silence that pressed on his ears. Within the walls, the keep loomed tall, its blackened stone covered in creeping vines. A great courtyard stretched before him, littered with the remains of banners long since tattered. The sigil upon them was faded, but Aelindor could just make out the image of a silver flame encircled by stars, a symbol he did not recognize. He knelt to touch the stone beneath his feet. It was colder than the air around it, and as his fingers brushed it, a faint tremor ran through the ground. He stood quickly, his heart pounding. "You are not the first to come here, Ranger." The voice was low and resonant, echoing through the empty courtyard. Aelindor spun around, his sword drawn in a heartbeat. A figure stepped out from the shadows of the keep, a man, or at least what once had been a man. His armor was of Numenorine make, darkened and pitted with age, and his face was pale, his eyes hollow and unblinking. "Who are you?" Aelindor demanded, though his voice wavered. "I am Tarathan, last captain of Aelindor," the figure replied, his words carrying a sorrow that seemed to chill the air further. "You tread upon cursed ground, Ranger. Turn back while you still can." Aelindor tightened his grip on his sword. "I seek the truth of this place," he said. "Why was it abandoned? What happened to those who dwelt here?" Tarathan laughed, though it was a sound devoid of mirth. "The truth. It is not a gift I can give you, but a burden. If you seek it, then step forward, but know this, once you learn it, you cannot unsee it." Aelindor hesitated, the weight of the captain's words pressing upon him. But his resolve did not falter. "I will face whatever truth this place holds." The captain regarded him for a moment, then nodded. "So be it." With a wave of his hand, the gates of the keep creaked open, revealing a great hall beyond. Its walls were lined with blackened tapestries, and at its center stood a stone table upon which rested a shattered crown. The lords of Aelindor sought to master the shadows, Tarathan said as he led Aelindor inside. They delved into the ancient arts, believing they could bind the darkness to their will. But the darkness does not serve, Ranger. It consumes. He gestured to the crown. That is all that remains of Lord Eredin, who thought himself a master of the unseen. When he placed that crown upon his head, he called forth a power that turned against him and all who followed him. Aelindor approached the table, the air growing colder with each step. The crown seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive, and he could feel the weight of its malevolence pressing against his mind. "What is this power?" he asked. "A remnant of Morgoth's shadow," Tarathan replied, his voice heavy with despair. "It lingers still, bound to this place by Eredin's folly. It cannot be destroyed, only contained." Aelindor turned to face the captain. "Then why do you remain here?" "To guard it," Tarathan said simply. "To ensure that none may claim it. For though it would bring only ruin, there are those who would seek its power regardless." The ranger's heart sank. He had hoped to find knowledge, perhaps even glory, but instead he had found a burden too great for one man to bear. "What would you have me do?" he asked. "Leave this place," Tarathan said. "Return to your kin and warn them. Let the name of Aelindor be forgotten, as it should have been long ago." Aelindor hesitated, his gaze lingering on the shattered crown. But he knew the captain was right. Some truths were not meant to be carried. As he stepped back into the courtyard, the air seemed lighter, though the shadows still clung to the edges of his vision. He turned to look back at the keep, but the gates had already closed, and Tarathan was nowhere to be seen. Aelindor pulled his cloak tighter around him and began the long journey home, the weight of what he had seen settling heavily on his shoulders. The winds of the western lands carried whispers still, but now Aelindor knew what they meant. Aelindor would remain forgotten, its secrets buried in shadow. And so long as he drew breath, he would ensure it stayed that way.